My patient ate 2 cloves every night for 30 days. Here's what happened to her body. I want to tell you about a patient of mine named Barbara, 64 years old, retired school principal, grandmother of 3, someone who came to me about 8 months ago with a list of complaints that I hear from patients her age almost every single week. Her blood sugar was in the pre-diabetic range, fasting glucose of 112, A1C of 5.9. Her inflammation markers were elevated, C-reactive protein sitting at 3.8, which puts her in the high cardiovascular risk category. She had chronic joint stiffness every morning that took her an hour to work through before she felt mobile enough to start her day. She was sleeping poorly, waking 2 or 3 times a night, never feeling fully rested. Her digestion was uncomfortable, bloating after most meals, irregular bowel habits, chronic mild nausea in the mornings, and she had gained 11 pounds over the previous 18 months without any significant change in her eating or her activity level. Barbara was not dramatically ill, but she was not well either. She was in that in-between zone that I see so often in my patients over 60, where nothing is serious enough to require urgent intervention, but everything is trending in the wrong direction, and the cumulative effect on daily quality of life is significant. We talked about dietary changes, about exercise, about sleep hygiene. And then I suggested something that Barbara told me later she almost dismissed entirely. I suggested she eat 2 whole cloves every night before bed for 30 days. She looked at me the way most people look at their doctor when their doctor says something unexpected. And then she said, 2 cloves, like the spice. And I said yes, exactly like the spice, 2 of them, every night for 30 days. This is what happened. My name is Dr. Dillon. I am a physician with over a decade of clinical experience. And Barbara's 30-day journey with 2 nightly cloves is one of the most instructive patient experiences I have had in years. Please stay with me until the end. I want to be clear about something before I tell you Barbara's story. Barbara did not only eat 2 cloves every night for 30 days. She also made modest dietary improvements, reducing processed food and refined carbohydrates, and she began walking 30 minutes most days. These changes matter, and I'm not going to pretend the cloves operated in isolation from the rest of her health efforts. But here is what is important. Barbara had made similar dietary and exercise commitments before, twice in the previous 3 years, without the cloves. And both times her results were modest, and her gains reversed within a few months. The 30-day clove period produced results that were meaningfully different in both magnitude and sustainability from her previous efforts. And when we look at the specific changes that occurred, particularly in her inflammatory markers, her blood sugar, and her joint symptoms, the timeline and the pattern of improvement are consistent with what the research on eugenol specifically predicts. So while I cannot tell you with scientific certainty that every improvement Barbara experienced was caused by the cloves, the evidence is strongly suggestive, and her own experience was compelling enough that she has not stopped eating her 2 nightly cloves in 8 months. In the first week, Barbara reported 2 things that surprised her. The first was her sleep. By night 3, she was sleeping more deeply than she had in over a year. She was still waking once overnight, usually around 3 in the morning, but whereas previously she had been awake for 45 minutes to an hour when she woke, she was now falling back asleep within 10 to 15 minutes. The quality of the sleep she was getting felt different to her, more restorative. She was waking in the morning feeling like she had actually slept rather than simply been unconscious for 7 hours. This matches exactly what we know about eugenol's mild sedative properties and its blood sugar stabilizing effects. The reduction in overnight blood sugar volatility reduces one of the most common causes of middle-of-the-night waking. The second thing Barbara noticed in week 1 was her digestion. The chronic morning nausea that had been her unpleasant daily companion for years was significantly reduced by day 5. The bloating after meals was less pronounced. Her bowel habits became more regular and more comfortable. She told me at her 2-week check-in, "Dr. Dillon, my stomach feels like it belongs to a younger version of me." These early digestive and sleep improvements are what kept Barbara motivated through the first week when the other changes had not yet fully emerged. In weeks 2 and 3, the more significant metabolic changes began to appear. Barbara was checking her fasting blood sugar at home every morning, something I had asked her to do so we could track the pattern. In the first week, her fasting glucose was still in the 108 to 115 range, elevated but not dramatically different from her baseline. In week 2, she began to see consistent readings in the 99 to 106 range. By week 3, she had 3 consecutive mornings below 100 in the normal range for the first time in over 2 years. Now, I want to be honest. Her dietary changes were contributing to this improvement. Reducing refined carbohydrates reduces blood sugar. But the speed and pattern of improvement were faster than her dietary changes alone typically produce in my patients. And when I look at the mechanism, eugenol's direct improvement of insulin sensitivity and its reduction of overnight hepatic glucose output, the timeline is consistent with cloves playing a meaningful contributing role. What was more striking than the absolute numbers was the consistency. Barbara's blood sugar had always been volatile, fluctuating significantly from day to day. During weeks 2 and 3 of the Clove period, her readings became remarkably stable, less high-low variation, more predictable, more controlled. This reduction in glycemic variability is something eugenol research specifically predicts, and it is clinically meaningful beyond the average reading itself because blood sugar variability is independently associated with cardiovascular risk and diabetic complication development. Also in weeks 2 and 3, Barbara began reporting something she had almost stopped hoping for. Her morning joint stiffness, the hour-long ritual of slowly working through the aching in her hands, hips, and knees before she felt mobile, was getting shorter. By the end of week 2, she was mobile and comfortable within 20 to 25 minutes of waking rather than 60. By the end of week 3, it was 15 to 20 minutes. The stiffness had not disappeared. She has genuine osteoarthritis in her knees, and that is not reversible with cloves or anything else. But the inflammatory overlay on top of the structural joint changes, the excess cytokine-driven inflammation that amplifies the pain and stiffness of arthritis beyond what the structural damage itself would produce, that component was responding to the nightly eugenol. And for Barbara, whose mornings had been defined by pain and immobility for years, a reduction from 60 minutes of morning stiffness to 20 minutes was not a small thing. It was a meaningful restoration of her mornings. In week 4, the changes Barbara had experienced in sleep, blood sugar, and joint comfort consolidated and deepened. But 2 new things emerged in the final week that she had not anticipated, and that genuinely moved her when she told me about them at her 30-day appointment. The first was her energy. Barbara had been carrying what she described as a low-level exhaustion for so long that she had stopped thinking of it as abnormal. She had simply redefined her baseline as tired. In week 4, she began to have afternoons that felt different. The mid-afternoon energy drop that had been stealing 2 hours of her day for years was less severe. She was getting more done, feeling more present, choosing to take an evening walk rather than sitting on the couch because she actually had the energy for it. This change is consistent with the cumulative anti-inflammatory and blood sugar stabilizing effects of 30 days of consistent eugenol intake. Chronic low-grade inflammation and blood sugar volatility are 2 of the most energy-depleting conditions that adults over 60 deal with. And reducing both simultaneously produces exactly the kind of sustained energy improvement Barbara described. The second thing that emerged in week 4 was something Barbara brought up with slight embarrassment. She said she almost did not mention it because it seemed too superficial. Her skin looked better. Her daughter had commented on it. Her husband had commented on it. People were telling her she looked well in a way they had not for a while. She attributed it partly to the better sleep, and sleep quality has a profound effect on skin appearance. But the antioxidant and NRF2 pathway activation effects of consistent eugenol intake, which we discussed in our previous Clove videos, also produce measurable improvements in skin oxidative stress and collagen protection that show up visibly in skin appearance over weeks of consistent use. Barbara was not imagining it. The biology supports it. At her 30-day appointment, I ran a comprehensive blood panel. Her fasting glucose was 97, normal range, down from 112. Her A1C had dropped from 5.9 to 5.6, out of the pre-diabetic range entirely, though I want to be clear that 30 days is not enough time for a full A1C change, and the 5.6 reflected the trajectory of improvement rather than the full 30-day effect. Her C-reactive protein had dropped from 3.8 to 2.1, still above 1, which is the ideal target, but a meaningful reduction in cardiovascular inflammatory risk. She had lost 4 pounds. Modest, but consistent with the metabolic improvements rather than dramatic weight loss effort. And she reported sleeping better, moving more comfortably, feeling more energetic, and having fewer digestive complaints than she had experienced in years. Barbara sat across from me at that appointment and said, "I almost did not do this. 2 cloves seemed too simple." And I told her what I want to tell you right now. The most sustainable health practices are almost always simple ones. Not because simple means easy or effortless. Consistency requires real commitment. But because simple means accessible. Because simple means you can do it tonight. Because simple means that cost and complexity are not barriers between you and a meaningful health benefit. 2 cloves every night. That is what Barbara did. That is what the research supports. And that is what I am recommending to you today. Not as a substitute for medical care or prescribed medication, not as a miracle cure for anything, but as a simple, consistent, evidence-informed daily practice that, based on everything the research tells us about eugenol, and based on what I watched happen to Barbara over 30 days, has a genuine chance of quietly improving your blood sugar, your inflammation, your sleep, your joints, your energy, and possibly your skin while you sleep every single night. I am Dr. Dillon. Try it for 30 days. Check in with me in the comments at day 7, day 14, day 30. Tell me what you noticed. Tell me what surprised you. I read every single comment, and your experience matters to this community. Hit the like button. Subscribe to Healthy After 60. Share this with someone you love who is in Barbara's situation, managing quietly declining health with courage and without enough support. They deserve to know about this. And I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourself, starting tonight. I want to spend a few more minutes on something that I think is genuinely important for anyone who decides to try this after watching Barbara's story. And that is the question of how to make the 30 days as effective as possible. Because there is a difference between passively eating 2 cloves at night and actively engaging with the practice in a way that maximizes what you get from it. The first thing I recommend is what I call baseline measurement. Before you eat your first 2 cloves tonight, write down, or record in your phone, your starting point on the specific things you most want to improve. If blood sugar is your concern, write down your most recent fasting glucose reading or your last A1C. If joint stiffness is your concern, write down how many minutes it takes you to feel mobile in the morning. If sleep is your concern, write down how many times you typically wake overnight and how rested you feel on a scale of 1 to 10. If energy is your concern, write down how you typically feel at 3 in the afternoon on a scale of 1 to 10. These baseline numbers are important because the changes that happen over 30 days are gradual and cumulative, and gradual changes are easy to forget and hard to appreciate without a comparison point. Barbara would not have known her fasting glucose had dropped 15 points if she had not been measuring it from the start. She would not have known her morning stiffness had gone from 60 minutes to 20 minutes if she had not noted the 60 minutes before she began. Baseline measurement transforms a subjective sense that things might be a little better into a concrete record of genuine improvement, and that concrete record is enormously motivating for continuing the practice. The second thing I recommend is consistency above all else. The benefits of nightly clove consumption are cumulative. They build with each passing day, and they require consistent daily intake to accumulate meaningfully. Missing one night occasionally is not catastrophic, but missing 3 nights out of 7 is not a 30-day clove protocol. It is an occasional clove habit, and it will not produce the results that 30 consecutive nights of consistent intake produces. Find a way to make it automatic. Put your 2 cloves next to your toothbrush so you see them as part of your pre-bed routine. Keep them on your nightstand. Set a reminder on your phone at a consistent bedtime. The routine of it, the same time, the same place, the same ritual, is what creates the consistency that creates the results. The third thing I recommend is combining the nightly cloves with the morning clove water or coffee practice we discussed in our earlier videos if possible. The combined morning and evening approach maintains eugenol levels in your system around the clock rather than only during the overnight hours, and the cumulative anti-inflammatory and metabolic effects are correspondingly greater. Barbara was only doing evenings. Imagine what her 30-day results might have looked like if she had also been doing morning clove water. I encouraged her to add it after her 30-day appointment, and her results at the 60-day mark were even more impressive. The compounding effect of consistent morning and evening clove use over 2 months was more than twice the benefit of 30 days of evening use alone. Start with evenings if that is the simpler starting point. Add mornings when you are ready. Build the practice gradually and let it compound. I am Dr. Dillon. I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourself. Barbara is proof that the simplest things sometimes produce the most meaningful results.